Good afternoon and welcome to the Mountain Within Leadership Summit. This is the second installment, and those of you who were able to be with us this morning, you will have heard the first part on leadership in the cosmic context. I'm Dr. Herta von Stiegel, and it gives me great pleasure to be with you this afternoon as part of the leadership course at the Nairobi Central Camp meeting. You may have wondered, why are you calling this the Mountain Within Leadership Summit? And this summit is based on an expedition that my husband and I led of disabled and non-disabled climbers up Mount Kilimanjaro. And I always thought I was a very good leader, but my goodness, when you lead a group of volunteers up the world's tallest mountain, you actually realize that you have so much to learn. And as part of this expedition, I just wanted to share some of the leadership lessons that we learned, that I learned in the process. So the Mountain Within. It is based on this book that was published by McGraw-Hill as a lead title. And unfortunately, we will not have a lot of time together. But this afternoon, I just want to focus on some fundamentals. This morning, we covered the notion that leadership is in the cosmic context where the principle of the universe, of God's universe, is love. Love, and his modus operandi is delegation and free choice. However, there was a rebellion, and this earth, even after the cross, is still a territory in dispute. And we are actually fighting an enemy who is very well organized, who has been defeated, who has been disarmed, but nevertheless, his motivation is pure selfishness, and his way of leading, his way of doing things is through force, manipulation, and fear. And as we go through these sessions, I want us to think in terms of what is motivating me? Why am I here? And so this afternoon, we're going to talk about leadership. What is it? And why is it important? What is it and why is it important? Leadership, I have been asked so many times, are leaders born or are they made? Well, the only way we come into this world is by birth, right? But certainly leadership skills can be learned, but as we will see during this session, it is broader than that. It is broader than that. Leadership, and often we think in terms of it is the president of a country, it is the CEO of a corporation, it is the pastor in the church or the president of the general conference. But leadership is so much more. As Ken Blanchard put it in his best-selling book, leadership is the process of influence. Anytime you seek to influence the thinking, the behavior, or development of people toward accomplishing a goal in their personal or their professional lives, you are taking on the role as a leader. So I would like to submit that in some way, each person has influence and each person is leading. However, the impact depends on your leadership ability and your capacity. So far, so good. Leadership is influence. Leadership, in its biblical sense, is a spiritual gift. It's a spiritual gift. And we have been talking about diversity in church, about different gifts and so forth. In Romans 12, 6-8, we are told we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give, but give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. So that's what Romans is telling us, that leadership is a spiritual gift. And I want to note here that leadership is not gender specific. It is not race specific. It is actually given to those whom the Spirit leads. So leadership is a gift. Leadership is incredibly, incredibly important. One of the well-known leadership experts, John Maxwell, whose books have been a tremendous inspiration to me, he says everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So what is leadership? I like this cartoon, and I'm hoping that you as viewers out there, that you can see these PowerPoint presentations. A lot of thought has been given to them. They have been thoughtfully designed to bring some joy to your faces. So leadership here with a group of penguins to follow ideas and dreams, no matter how flawed or foolish they are. I remember when I really conceived this notion of taking a group of disabled and non-disabled climbers up Mount Kilimanjaro. The question that I was asked was, what is a successful investment banker doing mountain climbing in the first place, but then taking this group of disabled and non-disabled climbers up this mountain in Africa? We were in London at the time, and my answer was threefold. One, a friend of mine was chairman of ENAM, a disability charity that where I had the opportunities to serve, and we wanted to increase the brand, the exposure of this charity. And so I had this great idea of doing this and producing a film, and I thought this is a great way to help my friend. This is a great way to really increase the profile of the charity. Secondly, I really wanted to demonstrate in a very, very tangible way that each one of us, no matter where we come from, no matter what our abilities or disabilities may be, no matter our race, our gender, each one of us is entitled to his or her dreams. And thirdly, I wanted to show that we could do so much more together than any one of us separately. So every climber was paired up with at least one buddy. So we had a really strong buddy system where we could actually do things together and grow together. So to some people, this may seem foolish that you would take a group of people with all sorts of disabilities up the world's tallest freestanding mountain. But out of this foolishness came so much beauty and so much enjoyment and so much learning to so many of us all over the world. So leadership, the higher you want to climb, the more you need leadership. The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. People who really want to have an impact need to hone their leadership skills. So this afternoon, as we are working together on this, it is really my desire to help us grow this muscle, because to some extent, yes, it is a gift, but it is also a muscle. Leadership ability is the lid that determines the person's level of effectiveness, according to John Maxwell. Leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. And the more the leader improves, the better the leader gets, the more everyone benefits. So it is truly a win-win. So remember, leadership is a gift, it's stewardship. Leadership is temporary. Even the Robert Mugabes of the world who wanted to hang on to their position forever with all sorts of measures to try and extend his life, even in situations like that, leadership is temporary. Sooner or later, we all need to step down, regardless of the position that we have. And thirdly, God holds leaders accountable. God holds leaders accountable. So, what kind of leaders do we have in the world? I would like to propose there are two, and we tend to have the mixture of the two. First of all, we have positional leaders. Who are the positional leaders? It is simply you are so determined and defined by the position that you have. You may be a CEO, you may be a president of a country, you may be an elder in a church or a pastor in a church. You are defined by your position. If that's all you have, if you have only a position, generally you will lead for your own benefit. If it is positional only, if you want to be in a certain place just because you have the title, you are generally there for your own benefit, and your influence is limited to the length of your position. Are we together on this? This is such an important point, because if we look at a head of state, for example, all the entourage, everything that's around you, the cars that you have, the secret service that you have, how long do you have that? You have it only as long as you have the position. Are we together? However, the transformational leader, this is the second type of leadership. The transformational leader leads for everyone's benefit. And where you have the most power and the most impact is when the positional leader and the transformational leader are one. So if you think of Nelson Mandela, for example, he was an incredible transformational leader even while he was in prison on Robben Island. However, when he became president of South Africa, most of us would agree he had the position, he was already a transformational leader, and he made a world of difference to the point where people around the world to this day are admiring and studying the leadership of Nelson Mandela. So it is the positional leadership, the transformational leadership, when they come together, because the transformational leader leads for everyone's benefit. And by the way, that is not dependent on any title. Being a transformational leader, you are not dependent on any title. You can go into any community, you can look at in any environment, you can actually see the transformational leaders. And these are people who lead for everyone's benefit. So effective leadership starts on the inside of the leader. It starts on the inside of the leader. I entitled my book, The Mountain Within, because most of us spend so much time actually looking at what are the issues that I need to conquer out there? What are the mountains that I need to conquer out there? I may have a boss who doesn't like me. I may have a mother-in-law who doesn't like me. I may have people around me who don't appreciate me. And we always look at the challenges out there in terms of, oh, I just need to handle that. I just need to get better at that, and then everything will be fine. The reality is that the mountain that each one of us needs to conquer is actually within us. The mountain is within us. In my book, I interviewed household names from Mo Ibrahim to President Ian Khama in Botswana, to Al Gore in America, and on and on. each one of these leaders, because leadership to some extent is defined by how self-aware are you. What is your self-awareness? And I asked each one of these leaders whether they knew their own mountain within. And with only one exception, every single one of them, just like that, could say, yes, this is my mountain within. This is what's holding me back. So as a leader, effective leadership starts inside of each one of us. And we need to decide whether we are going to be a servant leader in the model that Jesus laid out for us when he actually was prepared to put on an apron, to kneel down and wash his disciples' feet. Are we prepared to be servant leaders, or are we simply self-serving leaders? We often see this is a cartoon where the boss sits on top and is basically telling the people who are pulling so hard, who are trying to get this place built. And he says, believe me, fellows, everyone from the Pharaoh on down is an equally valued member of the team. I'm sure the people who were pulling so hard on the rope, they felt that way. So often we go past construction sites and maybe we see 2 people working and 3 supervising or 5 supervising. It is, how do you feel valued in a situation like that? Everyone is a valued member of the team. Great leadership has the potential to excite people to extraordinary levels of achievement. But it is not only about performance, it is about meaning. And we see it particularly right now during this COVID-19 crisis. I work a lot in the corporate sector. I serve on a number of major boards, and as well as leading a small company. And what I'm seeing in every aspect is the companies that know why they are there for. They know their purpose. The workforce is much, much more motivated. The companies that are well led, that understand the meaning of their work, they are much, much more enthusiastic. This is an important point and one that is often overlooked by contemporary leadership literature. Leaders at all levels make a difference to performance. They do so because they make performance meaningful. And in the very specific sense here, we have a camera crew here, we have the IT people, we have everywhere. Your work is incredibly meaningful because I could have the best message under the sun, but if you, my friend, are not there, are not recording it, if you don't make sure that I have a mic that is recording properly and so forth, this would be fruitless. So your job is incredibly meaningful, and it is my role as the beneficiary of what you are doing to actually tell you that your job is meaningful. This comes from a book, Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? These are 2 professors from the London Business School, Rob Coffey and Gareth Jones. Both my husband and I have had the privilege of meeting these gentlemen, and it is a truly, truly thought-provoking book. And each one of you who is leading in some way, I would like to ask you to stop and think, are you motivating people? Are you helping them to see the meaning in what they are doing? There's a famous story when St. Paul's Cathedral was built. The famous architect of St. Paul's Cathedral walked around the construction site and he interviewed a number of the builders. And he said, what are you doing here? And one of them said, oh, I'm laying bricks. And another one said, oh, I'm working on the glass for the windows, and so forth. And as the architect went around, he came across a couple people, and they were so enthusiastic about what they were doing. And he asked them, "What are you doing? What are you building?" And they said, "Oh, we are building a cathedral." And that's the essence of leadership. That's how you really instill meaning in people. Are you just doing something menial, or are you building a cathedral? And as the body of Christ, I would like to ask each one of us, are we just taking a place on the pew, or are we watching something on YouTube that is disjointed? Or are we really part of a movement where we are actually telling the good news to everyone out there? We are part of the kingdom of God, and we too are building cathedrals. And it is up to the leader to ensure that that type of meaning is instilled in people. One of the things that we all struggle, particularly those of us who are type A personalities, we have big egos. And nobody should deny it, because we all have egos. The question is, what do you do with that ego? And this afternoon, I want to walk us through this. The ego can either be where we are edging God out, or our identity, our sense of who we are, can be used to exalt God only. And the choice is ours. This morning, as I was sharing the text from Isaiah, where Lucifer is being described, and he says, "And I am going to do this. I will be exalted. I am going to do this. I, 5 times I, and I will be like God." And let's not forget that that's the leader that many of us actually choose to follow, where it is all about us. It is all about edging God out. So how do we edge God out? How do we edge God out? And this is tough. Some of these messages this afternoon are tough, but I know you can handle it. So first of all, when we put something else in God's place as the object of our worship. And you may say at this point, "But come on, Herta, we don't have idols in our churches or our homes or whatever. What are you talking about?" I'm talking about something that transcends forms out of wood or stone. I'm talking about what is it that consumes your energy. If you were actually to look at your diary right now, where do you plan to spend your time next week? What is consuming your energy? And don't tell me that God is important to you if you have no place in your diary for God. Don't tell me your family is important to you if you don't spend time with your husband, with your wife, with your children, with your family. Where do you spend your time? Look at what is it that is filling up your space. Secondly, when we seek leadership positions and lead for the wrong reasons. There is nothing wrong with seeking leadership positions. The question is, why are you doing it? Why are you seeking those positions? What is it that you want to achieve when you are in a certain position? Is it for yourself? Is it for your own ego? Is it for your own influence? Is it for your own sense of identity and self-aggrandizement? Or is it really to benefit everyone else? When we put others in God's place as our major audience for self-worth, this is a really, really important one. And I would like to speak specifically to the women leaders, because we tend to suffer more from low self-esteem than our male counterparts, although nobody is immune from this. We all need reinforcement. We all need encouragement. But this goes to the fundamentals of self-worth. I remember when I was small, I was basically told that to some extent my worth was dependent on whom I marry. My worth was dependent on a lot of externals. And I married a wonderful husband, and we met at Andrews University when we were still very, very young. So I thank God every day for that. And in September, we will actually have been married 15,000 days. So you can figure that out, how many years that is. But my ultimate sense of self-worth comes from God. It's His approval. And I think each one of us needs to ask, where does my self-worth come from? And this is when we lose intimacy with God, we actually fear closeness with others. That relationship with God is absolutely critical to everything that we are doing. So how do I alter my leadership ego? How do you alter your leadership ego? And yes, alter is not a spelling error, because the only way we can do this is by actually putting our ego, putting everything we are, everything we have on the altar of God. When we choose to do that, then instead of pride and fear, we will have humility and confidence that brings health in the relationships in which we are involved. It's very interesting. Yesterday, I don't know how many of you here in Nairobi, in Kenya, one of the leading newspapers is the Daily Nation. And yesterday, one of the leadership profiles in the nation was of Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who has become very powerful in President Kenyatta's cabinet. And I read the interview with tremendous interest, and it was really, really fascinating to me to see how the journalist was actually portraying Dr. Matiang'i. And he said, the way he succeeds is not allowing his ambitions to peep from under the blanket of humility. And that shows that he has a future in politics. When I read that, I read it over breakfast yesterday morning, and I turned to my husband and I said, you know, this journalist may be a fantastic journalist, but he's looking at humility as something you have to disguise, or that you use humility to cover your ambition. This is not what leadership is, true leadership is all about. There is a lot of data out there from the likes of Jim Collins and others who show that effective leaders, whether in the religious world or the secular world, and most of this work has been done in the secular world, effective leaders are level 5 leaders, which basically means they have this unusual combination of true humility and professional will. True humility and professional will. So humility is not something that you use as a cloak to cover selfish ambition. It is there, it is fundamentally there, knowing that everything you are, everything that you are achieving, at the end of the day, you're doing for God's glory, and it is only because He is giving us the strength that we can breathe every day and that we can lead with any level of effectiveness. So instead of pride and fear, humility and confidence. Oops. I have lost my connection, but I will continue with my papers. This is one reason, quite frankly, when I do public speaking, where I always have paper. I back things up with paper because you never know what happens. So first of all, replace pride and fear. Secondly, instead of hierarchy, we create community and self-acceptance. Instead of hierarchy, we create community and self-acceptance. And instead of humiliation, instead of manipulation, where we just think and scheme, how do I get from point A to point B? It is honesty and integrity. Honesty and integrity. You know, I was asking a number of my colleagues, what would you want from a leader? And so many of them came back with the same thing. We want to see honesty and integrity. So what is a true transformational leader, and what does this leadership look like? Transformational leadership is situational. It is not hierarchical, and it is relational, which basically means that it is authentic. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. That it is authentic, that it is real, and it is not hierarchical. And this was something else that came out in the interview with Dr. Matyangi yesterday. He said, I may be the leader, but for me to be effective, I have to listen to everybody else. I have to take into account what everyone else is saying. And that is true leadership. It is not hierarchical. So how do I become an effective leader? To be a real leader, you must be yourself. And this is so, so important. You know, I have been wrestling with this passage in John 13 for a long time, where Jesus just kneels down and he washes his disciples' feet. But what precedes that incident is the statement that Jesus, knowing who he was, that he had come from the Father and was going back to the Father, humbled himself and he knelt down. Real leaders know exactly who they are. They are authentic. They make mistakes. Goodness, the worst thing that happens is, you know, you see a leader make mistakes and you sit there and you look and the person doesn't apologize. And you think, what in the big creation? wouldn't it make you feel a lot better if he apologized or if she apologized and be transparent about what it is that they are doing? Let's be transparent. Let's be ourselves. Let's be authentic. And it is in small things and in big things. If you're breaking something, or if you are really making in your kitchen, or if you are really making a big mistake that everybody can see, people will respect you if you fess up to it, if you admit to it. So be real. Great leaders really, really care. And this is fundamental. We often use the expression, people really don't care about what you say. They want to know if you care. How real are you? How much do you care? During this pandemic, what we have seen is the companies where, and I'm involved with 4 different companies with over 10,000 employees. When we start from the top, and actually care for people, where we say we want you to be healthy, we want you to take the precautions, we want you to be able to work from home, to still be productive, but do your best. That is something that makes all the difference. And we have in general, across the board, 98% satisfaction ratings, because people know that we care from the very top. And that we don't want them to be exposed unnecessarily. So great people, great leaders really care. Great leaders also can and must make a difference. It is not enough to sit there and to talk. You actually must make a difference that is felt by the people you expect to follow you. But, and here is the but. Great leaders can only make a difference and be truly transformational if they have moral authority. Moral authority. Nobody will follow you, unless you have a gun to their heads. But nobody will follow you voluntarily if you don't have moral authority. If you say one thing and you do another thing, your children will not follow you. Your employees will not follow you. So don't expect people to follow you if you don't have moral authority. And in my last session that I will do on Wednesday, I will actually talk about Nehemiah. Why Nehemiah was such an effective leader, because he had this. He had moral authority in absolute spades. So what do followers expect of a leader? First of all, they expect authenticity. Be real. We talked about that. They expect you to be accountable. Be accountable. They expect you to deliver results. And they expect you to create a community and create a significance. When we got to the mount of to the bottom of Mount Kilimanjaro, you know, we knew how long it would take us to the top. We had planned everything to the smallest, most minute detail that you could possibly think of. We had even planned, God forbid, if we had a fatality on the mountain, who would come to to take the body bags. Every detail we could think of, we had planned. So just imagine with me for a moment that we took everybody to the bottom of Mount Kilimanjaro and we just sat there. And we sat there on day 1, and we sat there on day 2, and I kept getting on top of a rock and say, we are going to climb this mountain, we are going to do this, and this is the vision, see the mountain up there, and we just go and sit there. And we don't move. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Well, first of all, the team that I was leading would not have put up with that in the first place, but nor should anybody else. Followers have every right to expect results from people, from their leaders. And it is only as you move toward the top, that you can actually achieve results. And accountability. Accountability. There is this text in Matthew 25:23. It is part of the parable of the talents, as we call it. And the master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Come and share your master's happiness. So this is why leadership is important. Leadership is a stewardship. Leadership is temporary. And leaders must be accountable. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Father in heaven, as we tackle these important subjects, the world is crying out for leaders at every level. The world is crying out for leaders who are truly servant leaders, who don't jostle for position just for their own benefit, but rather want to make a difference for everyone around them, that want to make a difference in their household, in their churches, in their communities, in their businesses. Lord, I pray for everyone who is listening to me this afternoon, every single person, that you may decide here and now, I too want to stand before God, and I too want to hear, well done, good and faithful, insert your name. I pray God's blessings on each one of us in Jesus' precious name. Amen.